Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum audience. Today we are talking about the geopolitics of Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean. There is a lot of things going on in the world right now. America and China are entering into a new Cold War, according to many scholars. But here, whatever the scholars are discussing, the determining factors that will ensure the stability in the globe would be in Pacific. So today here with us, Tauqir Sahab, he is a security analyst, and from Australia we are joined by Khadeja Khan. She is an international affairs expert. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
क्या हाल चाल है सर आपके? How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Sir, just coming to you with a straight question that the geopolitics of Pacific is under discussion on many forums these days. Russia calls it Asia Pacific. This region, Russia named it as Asia Pacific, and America has started using Indo Pacific in the documents of State Department. What is the difference between these two names? Why they are using two different names to identify the same region? What is going on there, sir? So give us a sense.
Well, Ahmed, the first thing is that it depends on the block. Actually, the blocks are determining it themselves now. You can see the block is incoming, which is Russian, China, and Asian countries. The other block you can see is US and India and different other countries. The naming Asia Pacific as Indo Pacific will not change anything, and they cannot even achieve any political benefit out of it. The fact remains the same, that it is a South Pacific Sea, and it will remain there. Actually, what they are trying to do is to get their dominance in that area, which for US it will be very difficult, because Philippines is already has left US partnership. South Korea is pretty far, and other countries. I don't think so that US is going to succeed. Actually, this is what is happening between India and US. Their strategic partnership is expanding beyond all from air to sea and to land, and that is the reason why US is trying to rename it, but it cannot be reshaped because
The objective
China.
sir, sorry to interrupt you here. What could be the main objectives of United States of America to change this terminology from Asia Pacific to Indo Pacific in their State Department's documents? What could possibly be their objective?
No, the objective, see, it's a very simple objective, but because then if they call it, then probably they will claim it. The India can claim that it is their part, and then US can enter also, because they have with India a strategic partnership, and then they can claim, okay, this is called Indo-Pacific, so we can also enter in that area. So which will actually not happen, as you already know, that Americans have already moved their 3 fleets, and one of the fleet is already in that area. But China is determined to protect their sea area, and Chinese will not allow it. Naming will not change anything.
So, Khadija, coming to you with this, how will you explain the nature of this competition that is going on in the Asia Pacific? And the quadrilateral talks are going between countries, and how you see this competition will look alike in the future, and will have implications on Australia and China relationship. Could you please give us a sense of this strategic nature of competition?
Certainly, Hamad. So I'd like to start with the Australia-China relationship. They are in a verbal battle at this time, at the moment as well. And then up in the Himalayan mountain range, there is tension between two of the armies of two of the world's most populous nations, which is India and China as well. That has reached a simmering point. And at the same time, Australia and China relationship is at a very critical level as well. There's high tensions, especially if we're talking in context of COVID-19 as well. But again, with Beijing and New Delhi, they even though they've agreed to peacefully resolve the situation, Australia has also made it very clear that it will not be escalating its confrontations with China by entering into a trade war with China as well. I'll talk about that in the second part as well. But just last week, Australia and India raised their relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership. It issued a joint declaration, which was a shared vision for maritime cooperation in the Indo Pacific, where these both countries are members of the so-called Quad, the Security Dialogue Framework, which compromises of of Japan, India, Australia, and the United States. And Modi has also pushed against China's influence in the region with this as well. While most of this new partnership is focused on economic cooperation, Australia is trying to focus its economic dependence away from China, and India also wanting a greater access to Australian goods and services. And the maritime cooperation is a key component for both the nations, and efforts to respond to China's intensified interest in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. With the research and some regional experts, they have flagged the possibility of the maritime agreement growing into include the mutual use of India's Andaman and Nicobar Islands and Australia's Cocos Islands for military purposes as well. And what this will do is this will give both the countries the ability to expand their surveillance and security presence beyond their current reach. And such agreement would give India better access to the Pacific Ocean and Australia better access to the Indian Ocean. But if we're talking about the meeting between the two, between Modi's recent chat with Scott Morrison, Australian's Prime Minister, Australia and India relationship, it does seem to be perfect as long as you keep coal and human rights abuses entirely off the agenda as well, which is something I'd like to talk about as well later on as well. But mainly with so with my area of focus, China-Australia relationship as well. Australia and China, I'd like to mention a bit about the COVID-19 here as well, in the increased tensions between the two countries, and Australia-China relationship is deteriorating day by day. With also there has been a spike.
If I may interrupt you here, what could possibly be the implications for Australia? Because the trade, Australia is depending on its trade. So how you will see Australia will move with this?
So the relationships pretty much started to start. We're talking about most recently in April, when the Australian federal government called for a global inquiry into the origins of the coronavirus outbreak, including China's initial response. 19 days later, Chinese ambassador to Australia hints in economic backlash to this, that if Australia keeps on pushing for this inquiry, there is going to be a possible backlash. And then following month, China imposed 80% tariff on Australian barley and blacklisted 4 of Australian abattoirs. Then 5 Australian students are also warned against, rethinking about they're cautioning them about studying in Australia as well. But from Chinese side, there hasn't been actually any sort of resentment towards, if we're talking about Australians, there hasn't been any sort of resentment amongst the general Chinese population. People are just recovering from the pandemic. They're slowly returning to their own life, and it doesn't actually affect the people-to-people connectivity, what the political atmosphere is. And this is actually not the first.
Thank you, Khadeja, for making this answer very simple for us. So moving towards you with the same question, that how you see what could be the possible future of this strategic competition going on in Asia Pacific? Could US be successful in achieving its objectives by using Australia and India and Japan, engaging this very, if I may say, very complex nature of competition?
Yes, Ahmad, indeed, it is a complex nature. But let me assure you that all American or even Australian and Japanese or South Korean efforts um, to change anything in Pacific region will be failed. I
So,
see future is in the hand of China. Chinese are determined. They are very hardworking. They are very nationalist, and they know how to deal with all these challenges. Definitely, they do not want war. China is not in favor of any kind of war, which we have seen even in Ladakh. They are not in favor of war. However, I'm very sure that if time comes for war, China will give a big surprise to anyone who will be aggressor. So I don't think so that America is going to succeed in this region, because they are pretty far away. And that's why US is using Australia, South Korea, and Japan. And as I said, Philippines is just out of the game. They do not want to be part of this, I would say, a dirty game which is being played. India is pretty far away. So the closest countries are actually Philippines, South Korea, and Japan. And I doubt it very much that US is going to succeed in their adventure.
Sir, if I may ask you, if I may take the liberty to ask, why, what could be the negative implications for India in all this scenario? Because US is, we don't see US to go with India in all-out war against China in trade world.
Ahmad, actually, you see, every country has its own national interests. The US has its own national interests, and definitely India has its own national interest. When the question will arise about the war, I doubt it very much that the US is going to support a full-scale war against China. And India is not in a position to fight a Chinese. And then, mind you, you'll see what is going to happen in future. If India will try any adventure, then Chinese and Pakistani military, they will have a joint action against India. And I doubt it very much that America is going to help India in any kind of full-scale war. That could be, it is possible that there is a limited war, and US plan and India plans to contain China and doing conspiracy like what they have done in Hong Kong, what they have done in Pacific region, or what they are trying to achieve. But I am very, very positive about it that they will not succeed.
So, Khadeja, lastly coming to you. So thank you for summing this up. Khadeja, could you please give us a sense how India is going to survive in this? Because we are seeing very much trouble sounding in India, and India is facing a low. India has hit with a low economic growth with after the re-election of Modi. And how you see India could be able to? How could India be able to sustain in the Asia Pacific with the tag of Indo Pacific?
Okay, so here mainly I'll talk about Australia's role with India as well, and the relationship between the two countries in the larger context as well. So like I was mentioning with the most recent agreement as well, there were a few very critical topics which were left off the table. For example, one of them is human rights as well. And I agree with Sir, there will come a time where the country is going to be backing up India in any sort of stance that they do place. For example, if we're talking about coal with Australia-India relationship, coal is the centerpiece of Australia's India exports. Of 21.1 billion exports to India in 2018, 10.9 billion was coal. And Australia's fossil fuel trade with India coal wasn't even mentioned in the recent meeting. It would have been a very in an unwelcome light for Morrison at the time. The leaders only focused on defense, on maritime interests, on science and technology, and mainly health issues, COVID-19 as well. China wasn't directly mentioned in this meeting, but the meeting was pretty much all about China at the time as well. And with India's increasing and flagrant government-backed human rights abuses, these were totally off the agenda as well. So if we're talking about this quadrilateral security dialogue between the four countries in active engagement, this move is sure to infuriate Beijing, which sees the alliance as a key plank in the US and its allies' project of containment, while constantly it is denied by all that are involved. And India's recent border tensions with China has also helped Canberra to draw in Delhi more closer strategically. But again, China was the obvious elephant in the room in that meeting as well. And even though we do see the relationship of India moving up with Australia to what it is, moving up a few levels, but this relationship is very, very imbalanced. With Australian exports to India more than 300%. So Australia's exports to India more than 300% are 300% of India's exports to Australia. So these two countries have been in fruitless talks for the past 9 years. And while India's political system, if we're comparing India to countries, while India's political system may be much closer to Australia, but not all democracies are the same. Not all democracies are made equal. Many are not as open, such as India. They're systematically corrupt. But at the moment, we do see countries, the West, turning just a blind eye to the atrocities which are being carried out by India and by Modi's Hindu nationalist BJP and the Hindutva ideology, the radical adherents that are being carried out. So India is just in a power grab, and it means more hardship for Kashmir at this time as well. But those things are just being swept up under the carpet at this point in time, as we can see, and as during the talks between Morrison and Modi at the moment as well.
Thank you for covering this very complex issue, sir. Would you like to add something in these comments, sir?
No, well, I think Khadeja is very well right what she has said. There is the relationship between India and Australia is actually a trade relationship. As far as the democracy is concerned, we know what kind of democracy India is following and what Modi is up to. In fact, it's not a democracy. They are just a name is being used as democracy. But finally, I can foresee the future that India is going to have a big trouble in this region, not only with Pakistan and China, but with other countries, small countries like Nepal, and name other countries. I'm pretty sure India is going to face a big challenge in coming months, and they will not succeed even with the help of USA.
I thank both of you for giving us a very thoughtful discussion and summing the complexity of the strategic nature of the competition that is going on in Asia Pacific. Whatever it is name in the State Departments, it doesn't matter. But Russia and China will call it Asia Pacific, and America will try to negate it. It's certain. And thank you, audience, for your time. See you next time with the next topic with new people. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Amma.